My supervisor stood in front of 23 people, called my year of work worthless garbage, and pressed delete while everyone watched. She thought she was erasing messy notes and inefficiencies. What she actually deleted was the only thing keeping our company alive. 30 seconds later, my phone rang with a $500,000 offer from a rival firm who understood exactly what she had just thrown away. And in that moment, I realized she had handed me the cleanest, most satisfying revenge I could ever imagine, by destroying herself with her own arrogance while I walked away to build something better. If you've ever had a boss who thought they could break you in front of everyone, you need to hear how this story ends. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's letting them drown in the consequences they created. I didn't plan to leave Stonebridge Analytics with a storm behind me. I didn't plan to walk out while my supervisor's face twisted in shock. But sometimes revenge plans itself. 18 months before that moment, I started as a client relationship coordinator at Stonebridge. The job sounded simple. Track calls, send emails, log client notes, move on. But what I found on my first week made my stomach drop. Our client files were cold, robotic, just invoice numbers, quick replies, and polite brush-offs. No warmth, no connection, no human touch. And our clients were leaving, quietly, consistently. One by one, they walked away while the company pretended nothing was wrong. I couldn't let that happen. I started doing something everyone else thought was a waste of time. I treated people like people. When Harold Whitman mentioned his dog's surgery, I made a note. 2 weeks later, I called back to ask how Max was healing. Harold paused, surprised, then talked for 15 minutes about Max's progress and how much it meant that someone remembered. When Martha Ellington's company hit its 15-year mark, I sent a small note celebrating her milestone and asked about her next goals. She replied within hours, booking a consultation worth $12,000. These weren't big gestures. They were real moments, conversations that showed I cared about more than a transaction. And our clients felt it. Slowly, they stopped leaving. They started calling me directly. They brought new projects, new referrals, and new energy to a company that was quietly bleeding out. I thought my supervisor, Victoria Langford, would see the results. That she would appreciate how a few extra minutes with people were worth thousands in loyalty. But she didn't. She only saw that I spent too long on calls and wasn't efficient. And that's when she decided I needed to be taught a lesson. Victoria Langford didn't like the attention I was getting. She didn't like that clients started asking for me by name or that I was pulling in projects no one else could secure. She saw my work as a threat to her clean spreadsheets and her so-called efficiency metrics. So she decided to bury me in busy work. She called me into her office one Friday afternoon, a faint smirk on her face. "Richard, you need to audit every client conversation you've had over the past year. I want every note, every call detail, every follow-up documented." She called it a quality check, but it was a punishment, a way to keep me chained to my desk, away from the clients who trusted me. It took me weeks. Late nights, early mornings, and cups of coffee that went cold on my desk. I pulled up every note about Harold's dog, every conversation with Martha about her staff expansion, every call with Carol Monroe about her catering referrals. I tracked every dollar those conversations had brought in, over $200,000 in additional revenue. Page after page, I built a 53-page report proving what human connection meant to this company. I thought maybe, just maybe, when she saw the numbers, Victoria would finally understand. But when the day came, she didn't thank me. She didn't acknowledge the revenue, the retention, the loyalty I had built. Instead, she called a full department meeting with 23 employees. She made me pull up my audit on the big screen, and one by one she picked it apart. She scrolled through every note, every message, calling them unprofessional, wasteful, and irrelevant. She said talking about dogs and birthdays had no place in real business. My face burned as my co-workers stared at the floor, too uncomfortable to look at me. And then, with a single click, she hit delete. The moment Victoria's finger hit delete, I felt something crack inside me. 53 pages of relationship building, months of careful tracking, gone in a single second while 23 co-workers watched in stunned silence. Victoria turned from the screen, a satisfied look on her face, and said, "Starting today, we return to efficient professional protocols." I should have been angry. I should have yelled, demanded answers, or fought back in that room. But instead, I felt calm. Because in that moment, I realized something she didn't. She could delete my files, but she couldn't delete the relationships I had built. Harold still remembered how I cared about Max, his old dog, and called me before making major decisions. Martha still valued the way I celebrated her company's milestones and asked about her team. Carol still called when she needed guidance, remembering how I helped her navigate a tough season in her business. And while Victoria was standing there lecturing about efficiency, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced down and saw the caller ID, Summit Point Strategies. I stepped out of the conference room, my hands still shaking, and answered. On the other end was Michael Barnes, a senior partner at Summit Point. He said, "Richard, we've been following the changes you've made at Stonebridge. We know exactly who's been keeping those clients happy." And then he made me an offer that nearly stopped my heart. $500,000 a year, Richard, plus equity, plus full autonomy to build the kind of client relationships you believe in. I leaned against the hallway wall, the hum of the fluorescent lights above me, the muffled sound of Victoria's voice, still lecturing behind the door. In that moment, I knew everything had changed. Victoria thought she was punishing me, but she had just handed me the cleanest revenge possible, because I wasn't going to fight her. I was going to leave and let her watch everything she cared about fall apart. I walked back into the conference room, clutching my phone, pulse pounding, but my mind crystal clear. Victoria was still speaking, her voice sharp as she outlined her new protocols that would strip every ounce of humanity out of our client relationships. She paused when she saw me return, raising an eyebrow. "Richard, do you have any questions about our new efficiency procedures?" I looked around the room. My co-workers shifted uncomfortably, staring at their notebooks, the floor, anywhere but at me. The screen behind Victoria was blank now, the place where all my work had been displayed before she erased it with a single click. And that's when I knew this was the moment. "Actually, Victoria," I said, my voice calm, "I do have something to say." She smirked, waiting for me to argue, to beg, to defend myself. But I didn't. "I'm resigning from Stonebridge Analytics effective immediately." The room went dead silent. You could hear the faint hum of the air conditioner, the nervous tapping of a pen, the rustle of someone shifting in their chair. Victoria's smirk vanished, replaced by confusion, then panic. "You can't just quit in the middle of a department meeting," she snapped. "There are protocols, notice requirements." I held up my phone, the contract from Summit Point Strategies still open on the screen. Actually, my employment agreement allows for immediate resignation in cases of hostile work environments and professional misconduct. Thomas Greer, the CEO, who had been quietly observing from the back of the room, stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No, Thomas," I said firmly. "This needs to happen here." Victoria's face turned red, her jaw clenching as she realized she was losing control. "I will submit my formal resignation paperwork within the hour," I continued, gathering my notes and my pen from the table. and I'll be joining Summit Point Strategies as their Director of Client Relations. I turned to leave, feeling every eye in the room on me, and in that moment I felt free. The morning I walked into Summit Point Strategies, the air felt different. Gone was the stale tension of Stonebridge's beige hallways. The office was smaller, but there was a quiet buzz of energy that made every step feel like forward momentum. Michael Barnes greeted me with a firm handshake, smiling as he led me to my new office. "Richard, we've been waiting for you," he said. "You're going to change the way we do business." And I believed him. There was no red tape, no endless lectures about efficiency. They handed me a laptop, a fresh notebook, and freedom. My first act wasn't to create cold call scripts or generic client plans. It was to reach out, to let people know I was here, ready to listen, ready to help. But here's the truth. I didn't even have to call them first. 3 days in, my phone rang, and Harold Whitman's voice came through, warm but cautious. "Richard, I heard you made a move. How's it going over there?" We talked about Max, his old golden retriever, who was finally running again after treatment. We talked about his company's plans for a new product line, about his concerns with Stonebridge's new approach. By the end of that call, Harold said, "I think it's time we moved our account to Summit Point." That same afternoon, Martha Ellington called. She told me, "You're the first consultant who ever made me feel seen. If you're building something new, I want in." By the end of my first week, 6 of my former clients had reached out, not because I asked, but because they wanted to work with someone who treated them as people, not transactions. Meanwhile, back at Stonebridge, Victoria was starting to notice. She was making calls, trying to schedule reviews, only to hear, "We're exploring other options." And every time my phone rang, every time a client chose to follow, I realized the revenge was taking shape, quietly and powerfully, exactly as it should. Week 2 at Summit Point felt like a quiet victory lap I hadn't planned. Every morning I'd sip my coffee as the sunrise washed over the small conference room, reviewing notes about Harold's expansion plans, Martha's upcoming product launch, Carol's catering network referrals. They weren't just clients. They were people I respected, people who trusted me to remember the small details that made their businesses and lives matter. And they kept calling. George Tillman, the bookstore chain owner, reached out one morning. "Richard, I heard you're with Summit Point now. I'm tired of being treated like an invoice number. I want to work with someone who actually gives a damn." By Friday of that week, I had received messages from 14 former Stonebridge clients. Some were discreet, asking about Summit Point services. Others were blunt. "We're leaving Stonebridge. We're coming with you." Meanwhile, Stonebridge was starting to panic. Victoria, who had stood so confidently in front of 23 people deleting my work, was now dialing clients in a frenzy, trying to schedule quarterly reviews, trying to reassure them that efficiency was still best for their businesses. But clients didn't want efficiency. They wanted connection. When Victoria called Harold to check in, he told her politely, "I'm exploring new options, Victoria." When she reached out to Martha, she received a short, clear reply. "I've moved my business elsewhere." Each client's departure was a silent indictment of her methods, a quiet confirmation that the relationships she called worthless were the very lifelines holding Stonebridge together. And the beauty of it all was that I didn't have to steal anyone. I didn't have to send mass emails or cold call old contacts. I simply kept being me, treating people with the respect they deserved, and they made the choice themselves. Because sometimes the best revenge is letting the truth speak louder than any argument ever could. 3 weeks after I left, Victoria's world began to crack. Stonebridge's Monday morning meetings used to be filled with tidy graphs and confident talk about efficiency metrics. Now the reports were stained with red lines showing client after client walking away. Their biggest accounts, Harold, Martha, Carol, George, were gone. Smaller clients followed, whispering in the industry that Stonebridge felt cold now, that no one listened, that they were tired of being processed instead of valued. Inside those glass-walled conference rooms, panic replaced parade. Victoria called an emergency department meeting, her voice tight, eyes darting across nervous employees. "We need to understand why our top clients are leaving," she snapped, flipping through printouts of canceled contracts and lost revenue. "This isn't a reflection of our service quality. This is sabotage." She tried to blame me. Rumors swirled that Victoria was telling upper management I had stolen clients, that I had unethically poached business away. She claimed I was manipulating relationships to dismantle Stonebridge from the outside, but the truth was clear. Thomas Greer, the CEO, ordered an internal review, digging through call logs, emails, and timelines. And what they found was simple. I hadn't contacted a single client first. Every client who left had made the decision on their own, after experiencing the emptiness that Victoria's efficient system had created. Meanwhile, at Summit Point, my days were filled with purpose. I was helping Harold design a supply chain expansion. Martha was consulting with us about a new product launch. Carol brought us 3 referrals in a single week, telling each, "If you want someone who actually cares about your business, you need to talk to Richard." I didn't need to destroy Victoria. She was doing it herself, one ignored client at a time, while I quietly built something better, something real at Summit Point. And the best part was knowing that every client who left was a reminder. She had deleted the wrong thing, and now she was paying the price. By the 5th week, the damage was undeniable. Stonebridge's revenue charts kept bleeding downward, quarter after quarter. Clients weren't just leaving quietly anymore, they were telling industry peers why. They don't listen. They don't care. They just push invoices and call it service. The worst part for Victoria was that no one inside Stonebridge could stop it. Her calls to Harold went unanswered. Martha politely declined meetings. Carol's referrals had dried up completely. Even George, who had always been polite to a fault, told her, "Victoria, I'm done." Inside Summit Point, I watched it all unfold without lifting a finger. My days were filled with real conversations, helping clients thrive, building strategies that mattered, ensuring they felt heard and valued. And then one Thursday morning, my phone rang. The caller ID stopped me. Thomas Greer, CEO of Stonebridge Analytics. I took the call, stepping into the small conference room as sunlight streamed across the table. Thomas's voice was measured but tired. "Richard, I'd like to discuss a potential partnership opportunity." He didn't dance around the truth. He admitted Stonebridge was losing clients rapidly, that their client relations had collapsed after my departure, and that Victoria's efficiency system wasn't working. "We're looking to sell or transfer some of our remaining client accounts to Summit Point," he said, pausing. "And we'd like to know if you'd consider returning to oversee the transition." I sat quietly, letting the moment sink in. The company that had erased my work, called it worthless, and humiliated me in front of 23 people was now asking for help to salvage what they had left. And the best part? Victoria wasn't even on the call. Thomas hinted she might not be there much longer. "We're reevaluating leadership and client relations," he said carefully. It was the moment I realized revenge doesn't always need a loud explosion. Sometimes it looks like your former boss begging for your help, realizing too late they destroyed the only thing keeping them alive. I let Thomas's words hang in the air, letting him feel the weight of what he was asking. The company that had once erased my work and called it garbage was now hoping I would come back to rescue them, hoping I could fix what Victoria's arrogance had broken. He cleared his throat. "Richard, we're prepared to offer significant compensation increases, full autonomy over client relations, and a leadership role if you return." A year ago, I might have considered it, but standing in that sunlit conference room at Summit Point, I realized I no longer needed their validation. I had built something better. "Thomas," I said calmly, "I appreciate the offer, but I'm exactly where I need to be." There was a long silence before he replied, "I understand." That call confirmed everything I had worked for. Stonebridge had nothing left to hold on to except regret, and Victoria's philosophy had been exposed as the failure it truly was. Within 2 weeks, I heard through the professional network that Victoria had been let go. Stonebridge's board could no longer ignore the numbers. The clients had left, the revenue had collapsed, and their reputation was in shambles. They had to downsize, laying off nearly a third of their staff, closing their largest office and merging with a competitor to survive. A competitor that didn't care about relationships, only efficiency. Exactly what Victoria had wanted. Meanwhile, at Summit Point, I was offered a promotion. Partner, equity stake, leadership over expanding our client-first philosophy across every service line. As I walked into my new office on my first day as partner, I paused by the window, looking out over the city skyline. The world felt open, full of possibility. Victoria had tried to erase me to protect her system, but in the end, her system erased itself, while I stood stronger than ever, surrounded by clients who trusted me and a team who valued what I brought to the table. And that was the sweetest revenge I could have asked for. 2 years ago, I sat in a conference room as my work was deleted, my worth questioned, and my dignity tested. Today, I walk into Summit Point each morning with purpose, surrounded by a team that believes in treating clients like people, not numbers. Our office isn't just about closing deals, it's about remembering birthdays, asking about a client's sick dog, helping them navigate challenges, and celebrating their victories. It's about building something real, and it's working. Summit Point has become one of the fastest-growing consulting firms in our region, built entirely on the principles that Victoria once mocked. Clients trust us because they know we see them, hear them, and care about their success. Every time a client calls just to share good news, every time I help them solve a problem, I'm reminded that the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong in an argument. The best revenge is living in the success they said you'd never have. Victoria thought she was erasing inefficiency when she deleted my files, but she erased the only thing holding her world together. She lost everything because she couldn't see that relationships are the lifeline of any business. And I didn't need to fight her. I didn't need to destroy her. I just needed to step back and let her choices unravel themselves while I focused on building something better. That is the kind of revenge I wish for you too. If you've ever had someone undervalue your work, if you've ever been told you care too much or that your methods don't matter, let this be your reminder. Keep going, because one day you'll look back and realize the very thing they dismissed was the thing that made you unstoppable. And when that day comes, I hope you take a deep breath, smile, and let your success speak louder than any words ever could. If you've stayed with me until now, I want you to take this with you. Revenge doesn't always look like loud victories or dramatic takedowns. Sometimes the best revenge is waking up each day with peace in your heart, knowing you built something they said you couldn't. It's watching the people who tried to break you struggle under the weight of their own choices, while you rise quietly, steadily, and powerfully. Victoria thought she could erase me, but she erased herself. She believed efficiency mattered more than people, and in the end, she lost everything because she never learned what truly keeps a business alive. Meanwhile, I kept showing up, caring about the people others overlooked, remembering the details others forgot, and building trust where others only saw transactions. That's what I hope for you too. If you've ever been undervalued, if you've been told your way is wrong simply because it doesn't fit into someone else's system, let this be your reminder. Keep going. Your kindness, your attention to detail, your commitment to caring, these are not weaknesses, they are your greatest strengths. Thank you for being here, for listening, for giving your time to this story. If it resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories about quiet, powerful revenge and the true power of living well. And please share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you turned your setbacks into the foundation of your success.